Hello, friends. Stolen Cousins. 2023. Ugh. Okay. So, this is the first video of the year. I am going to be doing some horror animations that my husband suggested. So, yeah, let's get into it. If you're here, please like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to, spruce it up, share it. Share it to whoever you want to. That's your choice. That's up to you. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just suggesting something. You know, we're cousins, right? So support your family. Let's get into this. I'm also I'm also very grateful for the stolen cousins that I do have that do watch my videos and just support because support's free. All I'm asking for is for a like and a subscribe. I'm not really asking for that much. And just to build a community where people feel comfortable with watching core animations with someone. I also play other games. I have playlist of the games that I do play currently. I will be adding some new horror games to that. I will be adding some new non-horror games to that as well. See how that goes. But again, I just want to thank you. I have like almost 300 people subscribe to my channel, and I am just very appreciative of you guys just being a part of my community, a part of my stolen family. And I don't know, I I'm just very excited about it. So thank you again, and let's see where we can go from, let's see how far we can go. I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. I want to start, I want to be able to keep going. I want to be able to give away, do giveaways and giveaways and just literally just give away. Like, not have a full on, like, oh, like all these people, like all these videos and subscribe to all these channels or follow this app's instructions or download this app. I just really want to be able to give away, you know? If you're the 100th comment, you're gonna get a prize, And I just can't wait to be able to do that. If it's your birthday, let me know it's your birthday. Show me proof, show me your ID. I'll send you a little something for your birthday. I just really can't wait to be able to do all of that. And I know it's coming, and I'm just excited for it. Don't miss out. So if you're here, subscribe. Join my stolen family. Become a part of my stolen cousins because we get spoiled over here. Let's get this going. Again, these are recommended from my husband. So let's see how spooky it is. Gonna go deaf.
It happened on the 12th of October, 2007. Or at least, I think it did. My life since that day has been nothing but a messed up, bizarre story. No one believes me, as everyone I tell thinks I'm just crazy. But I know I'm not. I know what happened that day, and regardless of whether you believe me or not, this is my story. My name is James Smith, and as for as long as I can remember, I've never really had a home.
You're in the psych ward,
now,
friend.
Some people may see this as a bad thing, but
we're believing
to
you.
me it was perfect, as I truly felt like a free spirit every day I woke up. I moved around a lot while doing a few menial jobs here and there on the side to make ends meet. I didn't have much family, apart from my uncle who I used to travel with. He passed away a while ago, leaving me with his most prized possession, a little pink mirror. I don't know why, but he loved that thing to death, and I've always held on to it to remember him by. Apart from that, I really didn't own much. I just had a couple of clothes, the necessities, and my backpack. During my time on the road, I traversed the whole country, doing jobs during the day and staying at any available place at night. Most times, I'd stay at low-end hotels and motels as they were cheap. Looking back on it now, I'm pretty sure that I stayed at over 1,000 motels while I was on the road. But there's one particular motel that I'd never forget. It had the strangest name. It was called the Tempest Mortis Motel. The day was the 12th of October, 2007, and I had just finished doing a hard day's work. I think I was pretty much on the outskirts of town, so I found it harder to find a place to stay that night. I looked around for a couple of hours, and right when I was about to give up, I saw it. It was literally in the middle of nowhere, which to me was odd for a motel. I thought it was really odd because most of the motels I had seen were built beside bus stops or in active towns. That way,
Tourist
they always
attractions.
had an influx of customers who were always looking for a bed to sleep in. So seeing this one built right in the middle of nowhere made me think twice about going in. I don't know why, but something about it felt off and my instincts told me to steer clear. So I decided to look around a little more, but after walking and searching for a couple of hours, I found nothing. It was getting pretty dark now, and I knew I only had two choices. Either I slept on the ground outside in the cold, or I stayed at the strange motel I had avoided a while back. After a quick consideration, I decided to opt for the motel, as even though it gave off a strange vibe, it was still better than sleeping outside. So I made my way back to the motel. I still felt off about it while I walked back, so I told myself that I'd leave if anything strange happened. It was about 8:30 by the time I had arrived, and I remembered walking up to the building and seeing the parking lot completely empty, as there were no cars outside. I wasn't surprised as I figured not many people would be staying here. As I got closer, I noticed the motel had a bright neon sign that read, "We offer the best timeless service." Perplexed, I wondered what that meant as every other motel usually had the normal 24-hour service sign. As I walked on, I eventually brushed off the thought as I assumed that it was just their slogan or something. I finally reached the building, and as I opened the doors to walk in, something changed. For starters, the air felt calm and serene. It was like all my troubles had gone as soon as I stepped into the building. I walked up to the reception, and the woman there greeted me with a huge smile as she looked at me and said, "Welcome to the Tempest Mortis Hotel, lost traveler. May I ask your name?" She was oddly cheerful, so I looked at her and said, "I'm James Smith, and I'd like a room for the night." She then opened up a book to write down my name before she said, "Okay, Mr. James, may I take you to your room?" Shocked, I responded with, "What? But I haven't paid yet." She then said, "Not to worry, Mr. James. We always provide our services first. You can pay when you leave." As she started getting the room keys from her desk, I started thinking to myself, because in all my years of traveling, no motel had ever offered a bed without pay. And while she did say I'd pay when I leave, something about that didn't seem true. Standing there in that reception, I realized that my gut instincts were right. Something was seriously wrong with
You get
this
up out of
place.
there?
I thought about what to do next when the receptionist said something that pulled me from my thoughts. "No watches or mirrors." Confused, I said, "What?" The receptionist then repeated herself, saying, "I'm about to take you to your room, so I'm asking you if you have any watches or mirrors. They aren't allowed here." Stunned, I asked, "But that's a bit strange. May I ask why?" She then said, "It's just our motel's policy." Numerous thoughts began to run through my head as I wondered why they didn't allow those items. Normally, motels didn't care what you brought in, and when they did, it was only dangerous things like firearms or weapons. At this point, a lot of things weren't adding up. First, they offered a bed to me without paying, which was already screaming numerous alarms at me, as there was no such thing as a free bed. Then she blurted out this strange rule. I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I had to leave, as I had decided that I'd rather spend the night outside. But as I opened my mouth to tell her that I didn't want the room anymore, I heard the sound of thunder and I realized that it was now drizzling outside. The sudden rain made me take back my words because, as much as I wanted to leave, I couldn't afford to sleep in the rain and get sick. So I responded with, No, I don't have any watches or mirrors, just my clothes and the necessities. After hearing that, she smiled and said, "That's great, Mr. James. Now, if you'll kindly follow me to your room." As she showed me to my room, I heaved a sigh of relief that they didn't search me. As while I didn't have any watches, I did have a mirror. But there was no way I was going to give them that, so I decided to tell a little white lie. I then told myself it didn't matter as I was just going to spend the night and leave first thing in the morning. When we arrived at my room, I started to hear the sounds of numerous people chatting. I was shocked as I thought I was the only one there, so when the receptionist left, I decided to go check it out. I followed the noise to a lounge area, and what I saw left me speechless. About 100 people were spread out in the massive area, talking and chatting with themselves. It's really hard to describe, but they were all so diverse and differently dressed. At first, I thought there was some sort of costume party going on, as some of the men and women were sporting old Victorian-era suits and dresses from the 1800s. To the far left of the room, another group of people were wearing clothing that was from the early 2000s. But the more I took in the scene, I realized the people's clothing wasn't what shocked me. What shocked me more was that there were no cars in the parking lot, yet over 100 people were in the motel. I knew that they all couldn't have walked here, and eventually my brain couldn't take it anymore as I struggled to make sense of what was going on. But no matter how much I tried, I couldn't. I then slowly made my way to my room as I told myself that I just needed to go to bed and get the night over with so that I could leave as soon as it was morning. So I went to my room, locked the door, and went to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I realized that I had slept in. That was odd to me because I was usually an early bird and I hardly ever slept in. Brushing off the thought, I got up and did my morning activities before getting ready to leave. But when I was done, I didn't leave. It's hard to put into words, but it's as if my body didn't want to leave. So instead of going to the reception and checking out, I found myself making my way to the motel's lounge. They had a small bar, so I ordered a drink before sitting in one of the chairs. I drank for a little while before two arguing men started to walk up to me. Unlike some of the people there, they were dressed in modern clothing. When they finally reached me, the first man said, "Hey, you're new here, right?" So I replied with, "Yes, I am. Any problem?" The man then said, Good. Now will you tell this idiot here that it's the New York Jets that won the Super Bowl this year?" His other friend then retorted with, "No, you tell this madman that it's the Los Angeles Rams that won this year. Please tell him that I'm right and that it was a massive win against the Redskins." They started to argue again before I said, "Look, guys, I'm not really that into sports, but I heard that it was the Indianapolis Colts that won this year." When I was done speaking, they both had a shocked look on their faces before they busted out laughing. When they were done, the second man then said, "Hear that, Frank? He's saying that the Colts won. He's even crazier than us." And with that, they walked away laughing. Now, I wasn't really into sports, so I thought I might have been wrong. But as the day passed, I kept on having more and more strange conversations with the people at that motel. As later in the day, two people came in to sit at my table. They started talking about politics, but all they could do was argue as one of them said, "President Nixon's doing a shit job." The other person then looked shocked as he said, "Who?" "You mean President Roosevelt." I started getting tensed again, and I started to rack my brain at the confusion. I knew that the current president of the United States was George Bush, but I wasn't sure as I couldn't really remember. All my memories were now foggy, and the more I fought to remember, the harder it became to remember anything. As I sat there in deep thought, a pretty girl walked up to my table and offered me a drink. She then looked at me and said, "Why are you just
drinking stuff?
You look worried. What's wrong?" And I replied with, "I don't know. I'm trying to remember something that I wanted to do this morning, but I keep forgetting." The girl then looked at me with a smile and said, "Don't worry about that. If you forgot, it probably wasn't important. Now, let's drink a couple of drinks
what I say.
And live in the moment." So I stopped trying to remember what it was, and I agreed. We talked all through the night without a care in the world, and my mind felt free. We eventually made our way to my room, and as she walked in, the first thing she noticed was the pink mirror on my bed. She then picked it up and said, "Whoa, You know they don't allow these in here. I responded with, yeah, I know, but I can't remember how or why I brought it in. The girl then looked at herself in the mirror while saying, well, it's good that you did. It's been a while since I've seen my face in the mirror. It's such a weird rule, isn't it? I started to say, yeah, I know, before I stopped speechless. I let out a gut-wrenching scream as the girl in my room turned to look at me in shock. She then started to ask me, what happened? Why did you scream? But when I tried to speak, I started to stutter. I was so scared
What she look
that
like?
I couldn't find the words to speak or say what I had just seen.
What you see?
And while I couldn't say it then, looking back at it now,
Hurry up!
what horrified me to the bone was what I saw when the girl picked up the mirror.
What she see?
I was standing behind her, so I managed to get a glimpse of her reflection. And I knew without a doubt that when she looked into that mirror, the reflection that looked back was not the woman standing in my room. The person I saw in that mirror was much more different. She was a haggard old woman with little to no hair.
You ain't gotta talk
Her
about
eyes
her
were
like that.
completely white, and her skin hung off her frail skeleton. The woman's reflection truly looked like someone who was over 1,000 years old, and I knew she wasn't human because humans don't live that long. As the fear filled every inch of my body, I felt my thoughts and memories begin to come back, and the first word that ran through my mind was, leave. So with no hesitation, I picked up the mirror she had dropped, and I bolted. As I ran down the hallway, the motel's staff started chasing after me while screaming the words, no mirrors! No mirrors! The hallway's lights began to dim, and I couldn't see the door I was running to anymore. As I looked back at the motel's staff, I screamed as the people that were once human now looked like morbid creatures. It's really hard to describe, but they were all 6 feet tall creatures with pale white skin. They had slits for eyes, and they bore no mouths. But even then, I could still hear them screaming the words, no mirrors! No mirrors! I couldn't see where I was running to now, as the hallway was completely dark, but I kept running. I eventually saw a door, and as I dashed toward it, within seconds, I was finally outside. And even though I couldn't see or hear them anymore, I kept running. I ran all the way to the nearest police station, screaming at the top of my lungs. When I arrived, I wasn't making sense to the cops, so they told me to calm down.
And that's how you end up in the
hard,
psych ward.
I eventually did. They then gave me a report to fill, and I filled it out by writing everything that happened. I was then told to tell them the exact date the incident happened so they could write it down. So I told them, saying, it happened today, on the 13th of October, 2007. Chuckles filled the room as the cop took my statement, said, 2007? Have you been drinking, sir? It's 2012. At first, I thought they were playing some kind of sick prank, so I started shouting, stop messing with me. I remember the date. It happened today, on 13th October, 2007. Silence filled the room as everyone was tense now. The officer then said, well, today is 13th of October, but the year is 2012. Frustrated now, I grabbed him by the shirt and I told him to stop messing with me. The officer then said, sir, I know you're under a lot of stress and a bit delusional, but
get your motherfucking hands off me.
Officer, so please take your hand off my shirt. But I didn't. I thought the cops at the station were still trying to pull a sick trick on me. A trick that wasn't funny. And with all the fear, confusion, and rage I felt, I didn't think about what I did next as I punched the cop in the face. Within minutes, I was in cuffs and I was charged with assaulting an officer. I was taken to court where I stood by my case, but everyone just looked at me like I was a crazy person. The court deemed me mentally insane as my lawyer pleaded insanity. I was then taken to a mental institution where I was locked up and told to undergo rehabilitation. It's been 10 years now since I've been put in this place.
Damn.
Numerous psychologists have come to fix me, but I know what happened, and I stand by it. Last month, I asked for a pen and a book so that I could write down my experience and share it with the world. So, to whoever is seeing this, I don't care if you believe me or not. Society has deemed me a madman and thrown me into an asylum without hearing what I have to say. None of you were there, so you have no right to judge me. I know what happened in that motel is true. I don't know how they did it, but they took away 5 years of my life in one night. The funny thing is, as you people ignore me and lock me up in a cage, they are still out there, waiting for unlucky travelers. And any one of you people hearing my story could be next.
I don't mind it.
Her name was Claire Smith. She had the prettiest blue eyes in addition to a very nice smile. We had matched the night before on Tinder.
I don't think we're saying the same
thing.
thing.
For a while, we decided to go on a date.
She looks scary.
It was a great restaurant, and I arrived early. I waited for about 30 minutes before she finally got there. And as she walked up to me, I smiled because she looked exactly like her pictures. I had always been wary about first dates, as I had been a victim of catfishing numerous times in the past. So I was usually relieved when my date looked like the person they were claiming to be in real life. When she finally arrived at our table, we exchanged pleasantries before we ordered what to eat. We spoke extensively as the date went on, and as she told me about her hobbies, her likes and dislikes, and her plans for the future. I really enjoyed the date and her company, but after a while, I realized that there was something off about her. She had a very strange aura, as I could tell by her facial expressions that she wasn't really comfortable. It looked like she was worried about something. After a while, I decided to ignore it, because apart from those little strange details, she seemed like a really nice person. The date eventually came to an end, and as I made preparations to leave, Claire looked at me and said, "Hey, this was really great. I really enjoyed myself, and I actually don't want it to end. I hope this isn't too forward, but I would love if we continued this date at my apartment." Now, this was a bit strange to me, as most people normally waited till after the second date or third date before inviting someone over.
She's trying to kidnap you.
I still wanted to accept the invitation, as I really enjoyed the date too. So I agreed, and we made our way to her apartment. When we arrived, she offered me a seat before she asked the question, "Do you drink?" So I replied with, "Yes, I do." I then saw her smile as she said, "That's great. Wait here while I go whip up something really nice for us to drink." As she left for the kitchen, I found myself taking in my surroundings. She had a really nice apartment.
Stolen cousins, stop letting these people prepare your drinks without you being right there. Stop letting these people prepare your drinks, period. Alright? If it's not a twist top open, if you can't hear the ch, and even then, because they could stick a needle in it, you know? Don't go to these people's house the first day. You don't know these people. Just because you've grown, don't mean stranger danger is not in existence anymore. You're grown, so stranger danger needs to be worried about way more. These people be snatching up adults just like they be snatching up kids. They be drugging adults. Because why y'all be quick to accept something for somebody? Stop. That girl went away. We don't even know where she is. We don't see her on the screen. She got 2 pairs of shoes in the corner. Pair of heels and a pair of sneakers. It sounds like some kidnapper wear to me. She got a pair of heels to go out and snatch the men up and a pair of sneakers to put on when she going to bury your body. Like, comment, and subscribe if you're still here. I love y'all. That's why I'm telling you this. We're cousins now. I'm the big cousin in my family, so I'm just older than y'all, regardless of how old you are watching this. I'm your big cousin. Love y'all.
And nothing seemed out of place. I waited in the living room for a while as she took her time in the kitchen. I could hear her making the drinks from where I was sitting, and after a while, she came out with a homemade cocktail and 2 glasses. She poured out 2 drinks before handing me one. And as I took the drink from her, Claire looked at me with a smile and said, "Now, before you try the drink, I'd like, if you could, truthfully, tell me what you really think about it." I found her statement a bit odd, as she was now looking at me with so much excitement. I was a bit confused, but I didn't want to seem rude, as I knew she put a lot of effort into making it.
Sound like
so I
she's
smiled
drugging
and
you.
took a sip of the cocktail. It tasted amazing as I found myself drinking the whole thing. When I was done, I looked at her and said, "Wow, that was delicious. Did you actually make this cocktail by yourself?"
No.
Claire then smiled and said, "Yes, I did. I'm in my final college year, but I bartend on the side. So I always like creating delicious cocktails in my free time and getting people's thoughts on them." As she said that, I finally realized why she was so enthusiastic about me tasting the cocktail. After that, I had a couple more glasses as we continued talking into the night. After a while, Claire looked at me and said, "I'm really glad this is going well. I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not really good at this online dating stuff. I've been told I put off a really weird aura because I get really anxious and nervous on every first date. Most of the time, I don't know what to do, so I'm really glad I didn't scare you off." I remember letting out a small chuckle as I replied with, "I won't lie. I actually noticed that, but I like you too much to care." Claire then smiled as she reached out and gave me a kiss. After that, Claire got up to get more of her homemade cocktail in the kitchen, but I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I had to do it, as it was now or never. So I reached for one of the glass bottles that were on the table, and I broke off its base. Shocked, Claire turned around to see what happened, and I started to apologize as I explained it was an accident. But as she bent down to pick up the broken glass shards, I used the head of the now broken bottle to stab her in the gut.
Wait a minute! We thought she was creepy. You just out here killing folk?
She started to scream, so I immediately forced my hands over her mouth to stop her scream. And as she bled out, I calmly whispered in her ear, "When I was a boy, Claire, my
stranger danger, y'all.
We mostly hunted the game in the forest, animals like deers and rabbits. And even though I thoroughly enjoyed it, I've always wanted more. So, when I was 14, I decided to hunt something better. I waited for a particular woman who used to hike in our forest every morning. And during her hike that morning, I shot and killed her. Claire started struggling and screaming now, but I held her down as I continued with, "That was the beginning of something really beautiful in my life, Claire. And I wanted more of it, so I kept hunting down women. I moved to the city to get my hands on more game, and after a while, I realized
look at those eyes, just bloodshot.
In this modern world, hunting animals like you has never been easier. Because dating platforms like Tinder do all the work, as they bring my prey right to me." I then removed my hands from her mouth as I threw her body to the floor. She had lost a lot of blood now, so her screams weren't as loud anymore. I then looked at her and said, "I consider myself a modern hunter, Claire. And you should be grateful because you had the pleasure of seeing me."
So now I go from, "Gentlemen, stop going over these ladies' houses and, just drinking their stuff, they poisoning you," to, ladies, stop inviting these men into your house. They try and kill y'all. Alright? You know what, stolen cousins? Just stay separated. If you ain't in love already, you don't need it. I met my husband at my mom's house, so it was safe. If you're on these dating apps, please meet in a public setting. Don't invite them to your place. I say for months, because on a dating app, you don't really know nobody. And even after then, you don't know their true intentions. You don't know if they're trying to kill you or not. You don't know nobody. I don't even know what's the proper way of finding love if it's not at your mama's house. Like mine. Y'all be careful out here. Licensed. Be gun licensed. I said that in a previous video of mine. Because these horror animations be wild. y'all need to go and y'all need to be licensed. Oh my god, that made my head itch. That made my head like, what?
Women like you are so desperate for love, and I know you to do anything to get it.
You see?
That alone makes people like you my perfect target. I mean, it only took a pretty face like mine to get you to invite a stranger into your home.
Killers
I then
be
watched as
beautiful.
she tried to crawl towards the door before continuing with. But you know the best thing about hunting, Claire? It's the look of despair in your victim's eyes as they try to get away from you. That, my dear Claire, is the thrill of hunting. Looking on as your game puts up a futile struggle before you take that hope away by slowly putting them out of their misery. And with that, I repeatedly stabbed her with the broken bottle. She struggled, but it didn't take long before she was dead. When I was done having my fun, I calmly went outside to get the tools from my car. I then went back into Claire's apartment and I got to work. I put on my gloves and I cleaned up the place with bleach. I carried her bloody corpse and I put it in the bathtub that I had already filled with high-grade acid. The apartment now looked cleaner than ever, and the carcass was safely locked away in the bathtub. It'd take a couple of days before her remains are found, and I'd be long gone by then. So with a smile on my face, I made my way out of the apartment, and I congratulated myself on another successful hunt. That night, after dinner, I found myself using the Tinder app again. It didn't take long before I had quickly matched with another woman. She was called Abigail Dawson. She had beautiful brown eyes and amazing black hair. She lived in Los Angeles, and as we started texting, I began to smile as I said to myself, "Let the hunt begin."
It all started when I woke up to the sound of someone hammering on my apartment door. That was the first fright I got that night, heart pounding my chest as I grabbed the bat I kept under my bed and headed towards the door.
You see?
First thing I
Prepared.
do is look through the peephole to make sure it's not anyone sketchy, but I'm greeted by the sight of one of my neighbors. She looks terrified.
Which one?
She's covered in blood, and I can see just through the peephole that her face is a mess. I open up the door, she runs inside and immediately says, "You gotta get me out of here. My boyfriend's trying to kill me."
Why would you run?
I start to ask her what happened.
Yeah,
and
run
she
over
says
here
something
because I'm
like,
gonna protect you. I got
"There's
you.
no time. Just please get me out of here. I swear to God, he'll kill you too for just helping me."
He ain't killing me.
That was what sent me into a straight-up panic. Because if a guy was willing to beat his girlfriend up that badly, Lord knows that he'd be willing to put me in the ground. I just grabbed my car keys, ran downstairs with the girl following close behind, jumped into my car, then took off into the night. I remember asking her if she had anywhere I could take her, like a friend's or a relative's or something. She said no, and the best thing for us to do would be to drive to a motel so she could call the cops from there. So that's exactly what I did. I drove us to a motel and booked us a room. The clerk was obviously just as concerned as I was, but all it took was to explain that her boyfriend had tried to off her, and they were like, "Jeez, make sure you guys call the cops at least." The girl, whose name I didn't know at that point, I just knew she was a neighbor, said that she'd go up to the room and call them, then asked me to get her some ice from the ice machine so she could deal with the swelling on her face. When I got to the room, she said the cops would be there ASAP, took the ice, put it on her face, then just burst into tears. I tried my best to reassure her, telling her she was safe and stuff. Then, when she finally calmed down, I asked her what actually happened back at her apartment. She told me her boyfriend was abusive, and that she'd been planning on leaving for a while, but that night was the night she'd finally got the courage together to announce it to him. She said he walked into their bedroom to find her packing a bag, and not long after that, everything went to chaos. She started helping herself to the little bottle of liquor from the minibar, but not after promising she'd pay me back for them once everything had blown over. I had no reason to disbelieve her at the time. I mean, I felt like we had a kind of bond established already, but I abstained because I thought I'd be driving back to the apartment pretty soon.
Stop sipping in my
I
ear.
asked her if she was good to wait on her own while the cops drove out to her, but she asked me if I'd stay to keep her safe.
No.
She then made the point that if her boyfriend found the blood on my apartment door, she assured me that she'd left some on there while hammering on it, that he'd know she'd been there and he'd try to attack me, or worse. I'll be honest, I thought it was a pretty good point at the time. I hadn't seen the blood myself, but she was so covered in it that I believed her when she said that there was some on my door. Anyway, about an hour goes by and the cops still haven't showed up, and the motel rooms were arranged in a horseshoe shape, so we'd have seen them rolling into the parking lot if they had. I asked her to call them back to see what was going on, because obviously it was a really urgent situation, and I know that there was basically no way for the boyfriend in finding us, but I was still really paranoid that he would somehow. That's when the inconsistency started, because she gave me some lame duck of a reply like, "I'm sure they'll be here soon." If that was me, I'd have called 911 again if they hadn't shown up within like 10 minutes. So what was she so calm about that she was just cool with waiting for them for like an hour at that point?
But she did it.
I put it
She
down to
killed him.
booze, and at that point I was okay with waiting too. It wasn't like I had anywhere to be. I sure couldn't
Home.
just go
You
back
got
to my
home to
apartment
be.
with that psycho supposedly just a few doors down. But that's also about the same time that I started checking out the amount of blood on her nightshirt. She had like an oversized t-shirt and girl boxers on, and like I said earlier, they were drenched with blood, but also with some blood splattered too, like little spots here and there. She had this cut over her eye, and she had a nasty busted lip, but it looked like way too much blood for just those small wounds. So I asked her if she had any other kind of injuries, like an abdominal wound of some kind that might account for all the blood on her. She said no, and that it was all from the busted lip in her eye. And immediately I start smelling nonsense. I asked her again what exactly had happened back at the apartment, and she started getting weirdly defensive about what she told me. I was starting to think it wasn't quite the abusive spouse kind of story that she told me the first time around, but I had no inkling of what was really going on. That being said, I was getting tired of waiting for the cops to show, so I decided to call them back myself. All I had on me was my wallet, my phone, and my car keys, the only three things I'd had time to stuff into the pockets of my shorts before fleeing the apartment. But when I take my phone out to call the cops, she says something along the lines of, "What are you doing?" I
Calling the
state the
cops.
obvious. I'm about to call the cops back, and
Duh.
she's like, "Don't." I don't know if it was the way she was looking at me, the way she spoke, or the way she sort of tensed up when I told her that I was about to do that,
She about to beat
but the
your
mood
ass.
in the room just shifted completely. I asked her why not, and just went right back to dialing 911. But by the time the
911, what's
operator
your
spoke down the
emergency?
line, I looked up and saw she had a knife in her hand. She just said, "Hang up. Now."
911, what's your emergency?
So I did.
That's what you got a knife.
I never had a knife pulled on me at that point, and I can't overstate how terrifying it was. It wasn't even just the knife either. It was the overwhelming creepy sensation of knowing that all wasn't what it seemed. I wasn't hiding from the threat. I was with the threat. I'll be honest here. I basically begged her not to hurt me, and to my relief, she said she wouldn't as long as I drove her to the Canadian border. Given this was in Detroit, the border isn't all that far, but I didn't want to catch charges for aiding and abetting or whatever, so I knew I had to think of something to stop that from happening. It's not like I knew I couldn't tell the cops that I'd been threatened or whatever, but I also knew that the longer I spent in this girl's company, the more chances I'd have of being stabbed. So, I tell the girl that I'd drive her to the border, but that I needed to get something to eat first. I play it like I wanted to stop somewhere on the way, knowing she'd reason me down to getting something delivered from a 24-hour joint. She also stated that she'd be the one going down to pick the food up, as she didn't want me having the chance to sound the alarm. That's where she messed up, because she didn't seem to realize, to my infinite relief, that I could order from DoorDash and put something in the notes about needing the cops called to the motel. My whole plan hinged on there being a driver around that late at night, but thank God there was, and I was even able to show her the order without bringing up the notes section that mentioned needing 911 called to the motel. And the cops played it perfectly too. They showed up without any lights and sirens on, didn't park in the lot, walked up to the motel room without being spotted from the window, and just knocked on the door like they were a delivery driver. She walks over, opens up the door, then boom, They had a gun and a taser drawn on her before she even knew what was happening. She had the knife tucked into the back of her girl boxers, but the cops were wise to her drawing on them, and she hit the floor hard after they hit her with the taser. Turned out they'd been looking for her because, get this, she was the abusive partner who'd stabbed her boyfriend almost to death before finding some poor schmuck, i.e. me, to drive her to the border. Dude almost bled to death in their apartment but managed to crawl to another neighbor's place to get help. You should have seen the amount of blood in the hallway when I got back to my apartment building, and the whole place was crawling with cops and forensic gear. I thought I might be able to drive over to a friend's place to stay the night, contaminating a crime scene or whatever, but they had this section of the corridor closed off so I could actually get into where I lived. The cops came to my apartment in the morning to take my statement down and to fill me in on what they thought had happened. That's how I found out exactly what the deal was. It was 100% the craziest, most frightening thing that's ever happened to me, ever in my life. And just the fact that I was part of it seems completely surreal to me. But the thing that sticks with me is how easily I swallowed her nonsense story at first. How I thought it was helping someone I knew, someone I could trust, when in reality, one wrong move, and I might not actually be around to tell you this.
The 2020 pandemic that shook the world affected everyone in different ways. Some met financial insecurity. Others faced the social struggles brought by isolation during stringent lockdown regulations. Most faced extreme health complication, either with ourselves or with our loved ones. My name is Jason. I was 27 when the pandemic hit. I lived alone in a small apartment and struggled emotionally when my municipality forced me to remain inside for weeks. I was forced to work remotely, stuck behind a computer monitor all day. I was unable to visit my family, and to make matters worse, I was unable to release stress the only way I knew how, working out. At last, after months of feeling caged up, my city began to lift COVID-related regulations. The softening of rules included the reopening of gyms. As long as stations were sanitized constantly, masks were worn, and social distancing was respected, we were allowed to return to the gym. Finally. That Monday morning, I was the first in line outside of my local gym, eager to get back to work and regain my great physical condition. Upon entering, I felt right at home, despite changes that were being implemented. I hopped on a treadmill and began jogging. My stress began melting off. The next few weeks were paradise. I was working from home, allowing me more time for myself. I instantly used this time up at the gym. There, I felt rejuvenated. Every visit left me feeling stronger, both physically and mentally. Before long, I was going in 2 times a day, once in the morning and once late at night. It was late at night when things began to get strange. My gym was open 24 hours a day. During my morning workouts, the gym was always booming with people. Like me, most of us were hungry for workouts after being deprived for months. Every machine and weight station was taken, often lines for each. The gym was full of life, and I loved it. At night, the gym was the polar opposite. It was always deserted, and I often found myself alone in the entire gym with only the receptionist, a guy named Bill, watching me drowsily from his desk. I had every machine, weight station, and facility to myself. During one late workout session, I stared mindlessly at the television while running on the treadmill. I blasted music through my headphones. Beside the television, a large mirror covered the entire northern wall, where most meatheads fixed and admired their muscles during the day. Sweat dripped off my forehead. That was when something caught the corner of my peripheral vision. Through the reflection, I saw a shadow sweep behind me, causing my heart rate to accelerate even more. I turned to look back, but the gym remained empty. Just then, the soft click of a door closing caused me to jerk my head back. Had someone entered the locker rooms? Or had I imagined that? I rushed to the front desk. "Hey, Bill," I asked, trying to sound natural.
How's that?
"You haven't seen anyone else in the gym tonight, have you?" He shrugged at me. "Not since a few hours before you arrived." He returned his attention to his phone. Surely I had imagined it. But the next night, something similar happened again. It was 2 in the morning. The gym was deserted except for Bill and me. I had finished a brutal cardio session and moved on to the dumbbell station. I placed my phone on a nearby bench next to my towel, bottle of water, and a half-eaten protein bar. I began my workout. 1, 2, 3, 4. I whispered sharply into the silence of the gym. Exhaustion took over as I approached the end of my set. That's when the gym lights began to flicker. I placed the weights down and looked up at the light bulbs. Bill? I asked. The receptionist stared back at me from a distance, shrugging. Then, everything went dark. I stood for a moment, wondering
Bill.
what was going on. I realized I could use my phone as a flashlight, and I began to walk carefully towards the bench. As I did, I heard footsteps around me, brisk and light. I stopped, listening intently into the darkness.
Start swinging.
Scattered footsteps was raspy breathing. Okay, Bill, what the hell is going on? But before I could finish the sentence, a great force pushed me from behind, sending me flying forward onto the darkness. I landed on my stomach harshly. I began to get back to my feet, but excruciating pain broke
You're
out
getting
throughout
beat
my
up
torso.
by Jim
I recoiled to the
Jim
fetal position
Joes.
as something
Jim
hit my rib.
Ghosts.
On the ground, another blow hit my face.
Mm.
I heard my nose crack on impact, and instantly, the warm feeling of blood trickled down my face. I laid on the ground, covering my head. Only a few seconds passed when the lights turned back on. Holy shit! What the hell happened to you, man? Exclaimed Bill.
Bill, shut
I
the
looked
fuck up.
and saw him standing at the other end of the gym. What happened? My first thought was that Bill had attacked me, but there was no way he could have navigated the entirety of the gym in absolute darkness in a few seconds. I laid my head back, tilting it away from the pool of blood that had formed from my broken nose. What had happened? After a few weeks of light therapy, I was cleared by my doctor to return to the gym. I was happy to be back, but was on high alert. Something odd was going on in that gym, and I was going to be ready. I returned that evening for my usual 2 a.m. workout, but this time, I was prepared. In the pocket of my running shorts, I gripped a small taser. If someone was going to mess with me, they were going to suffer. I finished my cardio and moved on to the weight station. I lifted very light weights as instructed by the doctor and stayed highly alert. Once again, only Bill and I were in the gym. Right on cue, the lights began flickering. Between darkness and bright lights, I saw Bill begin to look towards the ceiling. Bring it on, I whispered and gripped my taser in my shorts. Finally, the lights went out, and I stood in complete darkness one more time. But nothing else occurred. The lights came back on. I'm
Where's
sorry
Bill?
about that, he began. Something's up with the lights. They've been doing that since, well, that night. The grip on my taser lessened. My adrenaline began to wear off, and I decided to call it a night. I headed for the locker rooms for a shower. Cold water
Why would
rained
you
down
do
on my
that?
head and streamed down my face. I was lost in thought, wondering who or what had caused my injuries in the dark. I stared blankly at the floor, the sound of pounding water around me, lost in my thoughts, when I was suddenly brought back to reality. The locker room fell pitch black as all of the lights snapped off. It was happening again. Panicking, I realized my taser was in my locker outside of the showers. I quickly turned off the water, put on my underwear and t-shirt, and navigated my way through the darkness. Hello, Jason. came
Beat
a
his
big
ass,
voice in the
Jason.
dark, echoing through the empty locker room's metal perimeter. I've been waiting a long time for this. Suddenly, a spark of light ignited the room. At first, I thought it was a match or a lighter, but the sound emitted corrected me. It was my own taser.
Oh.
Looking for this?
Yeah.
The light emitted lit up the face of my attacker partially. I couldn't recognize him, but he looked to be a middle-aged man. He dashed toward me, stabbing the taser forward. I dodged the attack, swaying left, but his other fist came crashing onto my face from the darkness. I stumbled back, giving him the chance to bring 30,000 volts of electricity on my left rib.
Damn,
As
you
the
had
taser
30,000
dug into my
ready?
side, my body flailed sharply on itself. I lost control of all my limbs, and my wet body came tumbling to the ground.
Oh.
The taser
You
came
did just
down
get out the shower.
one more time, I began to lose consciousness. As I faded away, I heard distant screams.
What you do
The
to
muffled
him?
sounds were
Like,
the
you
last
know,
things
what
I
is
heard
being
as I
caused?
floated away
What
into
happened?
unconsciousness. I woke up in a hospital bed a few hours later. Bill sat on a chair next to me, and after thanking the stars that I was alive, he explained the situation. He said my attacker's name was Isaac White. I instantly recognized the name, causing me to connect the dots before he finished the story.
Well, tell us the story.
Mr. White was an employee of mine. He always had a terrible attitude, and I sensed a strong resentment that I was his boss. Despite being over a decade younger than him, I had to let him go at the end of 2020. He begged me to give him another chance, imploring me to think of his wife and kids. But the situation came from my higher-ups. So you see, Bill finished, he always blamed you for what happened. Apparently, the police said he had been homeless for a few months. His wife and him had split up during the pandemic, and he was alone, without a place to live and without a job. He blamed you for everything. He was the one that had been cutting the power at the gym for weeks. When it last happened, I knew you were in the locker rooms alone. I grabbed my phone's flashlight and rushed to help you. That's when I found him standing over your unconscious body.
Beating your ass.
I am forever thankful towards Bill for saving my life. I have since then switched gyms, but have kept a strong friendship with him.
Good.
Since that occurrence, I have made it a priority to always stay vigilant and aware of everyone around me. I learned the hard way that if you let your guard down for one moment, it may cost you your life.
Blacking out in the shower of the gym where you just got beat up multiple times. Well, I'm going to stop it here. I will continue these videos just because the storyline for them is actually pretty good. So we'll finish up this video and then we will see, like, what was this one? Roommate ones, 21. Probably just, a mix. So yeah, we'll get back to this one. We'll finish this one up. So yeah, please stay tuned for that. Comment down below. What did you think about this video? Did you like it? What out of the 4 stories that we watched, which was your favorite story? They're not, I don't know. My scary and other people's scary is completely different. But they're not giving like scary, but they're giving like, reality scary, like things that could really happen to people. So I like it. My husband did a good job. Thank you guys for watching this with me. Again, thank you for even being subscribed to the channel. And until next time, Stolen Cousins, we're out of here.